Hey, it's Joe.
And Keith.
And we are on the 4th episode of the Business Sense podcast. Thank you for joining us. And again, please subscribe and also, share this podcast, this channel, YouTube channel with other people that you might think benefit from it and ask them to subscribe too. So again, thank you. The 4th episode, we are going to be talking about client relationships and maintaining client relationships, maybe even how do you even terminate a client relationship? So we'll see how this goes today. I think that's an important part of our business. I think any business whatsoever, this is the big thing. What was the hot word was like commoditization, and it just got it's so overused now, and everyone blames any issues that they have on when it comes to relationships and pricing and all that on that. And I think it was one of the things I probably heard, and I don't even know if I thought about it. It wasn't even a thought. It was more like a meme, and it just gets stuck in your head, and so you say it too, and but the more I think about it, I don't know if I agree the same way that I did in the past on the issue of commoditization, which is that, hey, people are just looking at what you do as, the same way they would look at buying eggs at a grocery store. Maybe that's for some businesses, but I just don't think it's for our business. So maintaining client relationships, what does that mean to you, Keith?
Geez, I think it means everything. Really, it really does. I was trying to think and trying to boil it down to just a couple of bullet points, but it's hard. There's so many areas and items to hit on client relationships, from the very beginning, not to talk about marketing or advertising or anything like that, but, we get a client, we onboard them, and that's really where the relationship officially starts, right? Because you might have some, discovery meetings early on, and by the time that they become a client, then the relationship and the maintenance really begins. And so that's everything from the onboarding process to, delivery of the service. When it comes to maintaining, I think also there's a distinction as to the, who on our team is really handling the deliverables and the project management standpoint. And then the relationship aspect, which is also, it's like a Venn diagram. I look at it from our team because they're constantly touching the client. They're constantly asking questions, a little bit more technical things. And then for us, depending on our level of involvement, we might be reviewing, or we might be just kind of maintaining that relationship, getting FaceTime. It's like sometimes I remember when I first started in public accounting, the partners were always going out to like lunches and dinners and invited to galas. And so I found that, I was like, that's pretty cool. And then, think about it, it kind of shows how deep sometimes relationships could get with clients if you're getting invited to birthdays or you're getting invited to cook-offs, things like that. So Those are the initial things that come to mind. And obviously you kind of maintain those things as throughout the year, but it constantly requires some touches and recurring events and scheduling and those types of things. So I don't know. What do you think? Those are the first couple of things that come to mind.
It's challenging. It's a relationship.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
You
got to work at it.
That's a challenging thing. So, in the sense of like maintaining it, everyone's an individual, so you can't treat. You got to recognize that.
Right.
And everyone communicates differently. Some people, have one client that he'll never answer the phone, he just wants to text and email, and that's how he communicates.
Yeah.
And then I got others that, want to call me every day. I've called. Yeah. I called this morning, 8:15. Got a text, hey, 7, hey, can we talk at 8 in the morning? And sure. And so, one of the analogies that I've used before is we are in the waiting business. You go into a restaurant and you're a server there, and everyone wants service and everyone wants a different level of service. You got the couple over there that they're nice and they're patient. Then you have, the family over there that's super impatient and they're getting frustrated because their drinks are not completely full. And so that part's hard. And I think you get to a point where it's the majority of what you're doing. It's like 80% of what you're doing because you have to do that.
Right.
Well, what do you think is the most challenging part?
That's a good question. I think what's challenging is because everyone's an individual, is trying to gauge and maybe adapt some way. Because I think in relationships, there should be a little bit of give and take in the sense of how you engage. I think one of the challenging part is having different types of clients to have, say, for example, different communication styles, who have different ways of expressing that we're doing a good job or not doing a good job, or don't communicate at all. And for that client, that might be okay. That's like no news is good news, I think is sometimes the saying, right?
Yeah.
Or a client that constantly needs to be updated, right? Once a week, say, hey, how's everything looking, right? And so I think one challenging part is understanding that there's different clients with different personalities. And so for me, I tend to try and like be a people pleaser, which obviously can work against me sometimes. But I feel that that is something that I feel like I'm a pretty decent, likable person. And so I feel like that's probably that's contributed to that.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's the initial thought, and something that comes challenging. I think that another thing that could become challenging is whenever the relationship is going through a conflict, or we end the relationship with the client. I think that can be also challenging. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's the part that was coming to mind. Is that part right there? You can't. It's kind of like your children, it's kind of the same thing. Is everyone needs a little bit of different attention,
Yeah, that's a good way of putting
not
it.
Everyone,
different attention, yeah.
Not everyone, you love them and you care for them all the same, but someone, you got, like for me, it's Isabella. She's crazy on, she's nuts, but she always wants dad,
Yeah.
And then, Gabby, she's, she wants to give me a hug and stuff, but she does a lot of independent play. And then me and Jer, we're always playing sports together and things like that. So everyone, the attention's not the same. But it's important.
Yeah.
And I do think about that with my clients. I think about it a lot. Okay, and it's a skill you develop. It's intuition you develop when you're like, okay, because I'm always asking questions. What do I need to be thinking about? Who do I need to talk to? And if you ask the right questions, you'll get the right answers. Yeah. And it's that methodology goes back to the Socratic method and Socrates and how he would, they say he would get up on the edge of his bed and ask himself questions, and that's how he would, would answer some of the greatest questions of, philosophy would be concerned with. So if you ask the right questions, it'll come. So that's one thing I'll be walking down the hall. That's why sometimes, I'm just like, it looks like I'm there, but not there because I'm always thinking.
You're in your thoughts.
Yeah, exactly. So on that note, I'm always thinking about my clients. I always care about my clients. And when you put a lot in, and we had a situation, last year with a big client, and, they were always here at the office, maybe 3-4 times, and then we'd bring the whole team, the audit team, the tax team, and we'd spend 4 to 6 hours, sometimes even a whole day, answering all their questions, controllers on text, text messaging, communication level with you, and then also the owner, and then one day, oh, we're going somewhere else, and like, what?
Yeah.
What do you, where does that come from? So that's hard, man, and I want to fix that. I don't want to just deal with that. I want to fix that because, I mean, we're at the point, where it's either like we keep growing super aggressively or we stabilize and fix things and then grow, but we're definitely at a point where it's time to like rethink a lot of things. And I want to fix that. And I think it comes down to values. And because what it comes down to, what I think, here's my perception of what I think that is. And someone told me this. I think it was Dale. Dale, if you're listening to this, I think you're the guy who told me this. But he's like, he's a vet, so he's been in a long time. So he knows and probably has these types of engagements a long time. So every now and then we have a talk, and he's like, well, they just probably look at you as a hired hand. And that's very, that hurts, to think that way. But then you think about it and you're like, okay, well, actually, yes, I think this is what it's like. And so, but it goes down to values where you might be dealing with someone like you need goals, we need goals. And we talked about that yesterday, why we need goals. And the goal may be for us, which we're still working on, the goal may be to be the best best person you can be. And that includes more than just, being successful, supporting for your family, right? That means also having good relationships with people. Whereas you may be dealing with someone where truly, truly the only thing that matters is money and making money, And so you're just a means of getting them there. And if once that's not the case, or they don't view you as that, then you're at the door, buddy.
Yeah.
So, but since you brought that up, I mean, how do you deal with that? How do you process that?
Well, I mean, it does, it's hard in our line of business. I'm still to the point where sometimes, I've got some really good, it depends on which client it is, right? If it's and it depends on the situation, of course, right? But if it's a long-term client or a really big client, obviously it requires, a significant amount of thought and deep dive into like what's going on. For me, I think we've had clients, and just because relationships end doesn't mean that, it's a bad thing. I mean, sometimes clients have some explosive growth and they just need someone in-house, or they need to hire someone, or whatever the reason might be. Or it might be the other way, and they might be too small for us, right? So at some point we or whatever other reason, maybe they're not happy with our service, or maybe our values don't align, whatever the reasons might be. It doesn't always necessarily mean that it has to be bad. So for me, I always want to try to understand what's really going on and getting inside the reasons as to, okay, what's really, is this, because you might hear things, but what's the deeper meaning? It's like, okay, for example, a client might say, the service that you're doing is not really valuable to me anymore, or we've hired someone in-house that can do the same thing, or whatever the reasons might be. It's really trying to understand, okay, well, what's the strategy behind it? Okay, you hired someone in-house, great. Well, how skillful? How much? Like, what skills do they have? Or do we need to pivot in the sense of we're growing and we need to hire more people in-house? And so I think that there's always a deeper meaning, and trying to really uncover that, I think is trying to get to the bottom of it, basically. Yeah. So that's one thing. The second thing is like, if a client really doesn't, or if a relationship doesn't align in the sense of values, where, it feels like the client is growing, we're growing, we're getting deeper understanding, processes are improving, or whatever it might be. If things just always seem kind of misaligned or timeliness isn't there, because sometimes, if we're doing, for example, an A&A client and a client doesn't give us bank statements or doesn't give us the information we need, then we can't do the work.
Yep.
Or if they give us the work in advance and then for some reason we're tied up on other projects and we can't get to them on time, so sometimes there's an imbalance of expectations or values and whatever it may be. I think it's important to communicate those things in advance. So, like I said, those are the things that come to mind. I think they're, very general, very situational dependent, right? The word is, situation dictates the circumstances and your reaction and how you address things. So, what do you think?
I like the word that you said, uncover, because that is the key. And that's, I've, when that happens, I call and I'm like, hey, like what happened? What's going on? What's the real issue here? Because it's usually a surprise. I mean, there's some cases where, maybe you kind of see the writing on the wall because there's tension and, it's ready to lead in there.
Yeah.
But there's some cases that it's true surprise because from the bottom of your heart that your team is working hard, that I'm working hard, that we think about this client, that, and a lot of times the surprises have come from like literally clients that we are, and it's interesting, but clients that we are truly like, they, sometimes make people feel a little anxious, because they're replying stuff, they want things quick, and so we're always on them, and it's just crazy how I can tell you from my experience that the surprise leaves have come from that, and I don't know what it is. Maybe some of it, the way we respond to them and just being anxious, and maybe not, the team not feeling confident engaging with them, and that energy is flowing into those interactions, and they feel it and they sense it, and you would call it vibes. Maybe there's not good vibes because everyone's always uptight when they're dealing with them. So that maybe that could be it. But those are always the ones, and so I do that. And what I mostly hear is again, it's the expectations part. It's that part right there, which is that maybe they're signed up for reconciliations. Reconciliations is a very scoped thing. We're taking a bank statement, we're checking off the box, but we're reviewing what's hitting the ledger, vouching that, moving on. Maybe there's some outstanding unclear transactions that you want to ask about. Right. That's it, know. And it's one of our lower level services, so it's not very expensive, and so we don't put a lot of time into it, but it's also, client feels comfortable, they want that service, so we give it to them. And so, I've had situations where it's like, we do the taxes and things come up on the books. Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, I thought you were doing that. It's like, we were doing a reconciliation, And so some of that's on us is to describe, like, I mean, you and I could come and we need to. I talked about it is literally, let's sit down, let's brainstorm and talk about all the things, like potential issue items that are going to come up, lay it on the table, and then present them in a form that someone can consume, audio, video, a paper form. You'd probably do all three media so that you're crossing your fingers that they get this. And or maybe you even have someone, you hire someone or someone in house that's their sole job. They call and say, here's, want to go take you through the 10 items that are important for you to understand, and if you have any questions, let us know so we can get to the team. But that's all. That's it. It's just like, and I get it though, because I see it here at the office. Like, if I don't hear from someone for a while, I'm like, what are you doing? Are you even working? You know? And because sometimes my schedule is, I'm transitioning back because I've been in and out because I just had my fourth child. But if I don't hear from someone, I'm like, what are they doing? Are they doing anything? And most of the time they are. Yeah. But they're not communicating to me, and I'm not hearing. And so they let my mind run wild. And so you might be dealing with people that are neurotic, on the client side, and that means that they have emotional responses. They can be sometimes negative thinking and be thinking the worst in relation to what we're doing, and that not be the truth. So we do have a responsibility to figure that out, to get to some type of means or mechanism where that, because that's inherent. We know it's inherent. We've experienced it. We know it. Right. It comes up. So we got to deal with it.
Yeah.
We got to deal with it. And I'm not even mentioning getting into, the aspect of how you deal with when there's more than just the owner, because sometimes you are dealing with an in-house person.
Yeah.
And how does that information distribute? How do you keep everyone?
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. I've seen it too.
Right. So. Maybe we'll talk about that next time, because I think
that's a good one.
That's is having another person in that dynamic and how you deal with that, because for our business and where we're at in our landscape, that is important. It's becoming more important as our clients grow and we grow.
Yeah, that's right.
They're getting more, a need. You want them to grow, and we want to grow with them.
Yeah.
We all want to grow together. That's the idea of this whole game of business. And that's how you measure. That's one of the scores. It's like if we're playing Monopoly. Like, how do I know you're beating me and I'm winning? Well, I look at your scoreboard and I look at your bank, and okay, you're pretty good. You're setting up pretty good, and so that is a way that we measure it. Yeah, we'll share that for next time.
All right, that sounds good. That sounds like a good stopping point for now. Then.
Okay. Yeah. You got any final thoughts?
No, I think relationships is just find what works for you and invest in your relationships. They're important. And when things come up, it's you gotta try to address them as soon as possible. And if relationships end, that's okay. Learning from them, I think, is also important. And I mean, that's basically it.
All right, great. Hey, thank you again for listening to the Business Sense podcast. Again, we're the partners of JAG Argueta, and we're a CPA firm located in Houston, Texas. You can visit our website. I haven't mentioned that at jagargueta.com. If that's too hard to remember, jagcpa.com will route there. So that a lot of times that's easier to remember. So thanks for joining. Subscribe to the podcast and share the love. Talk to you soon.